All right, if you're gearing up for your IGNOU exams, you are in exactly the right place. We are about to tackle one of those topics that you just have to know, Gary Becker's models on why we invest in education. So stick with me, and I promise by the end of this, you'll feel like a total pro on this. Let's get right into it.
I mean, just think about it for a second. Look around you. From a small village somewhere in Uttar Pradesh to the bustling tech hubs of Bangalore, the educational paths people take are just worlds apart. But why? Is it all down to who's naturally smarter? Or is it really about who has the money to pay for it? This is the fundamental question that the Nobel Prize winner Gary Becker helps us unpack.
So here's our game plan for today. We're going to start with that big central question. Then we'll get our hands dirty with the core concepts of demand and supply in education. After that, we'll break down each of Becker's famous models, put them head to head, and then wrap it all up with a nice, clean summary that's tailor-made for your exam revision. Sound good?
Okay, let's start at square one, the absolute foundation. Why do our parents pour so much time, so much effort, and let's be honest, so much money into getting an education? Well, Becker's entire theory is built on one simple but really powerful idea. And that idea is called human capital investment. It's actually a pretty intuitive concept. You should think of your education just like you'd think about any other investment, like buying stocks or property. You put in resources now. That's your tuition fees, your time, the late-night study sessions, all with the expectation of getting a bigger return in the future. And in this case, that return is a better career and hopefully a much higher salary. It's a simple cost-benefit calculation.
Right. Now, to really, and I mean really, get a grip on Becker's two models, you've got to master the two main tools he uses to build them. These are the demand and supply curves for education. I promise you, if you get these two concepts down, the rest is going to feel like a piece of cake. First up is the demand curve. Now, be careful here. This isn't your typical Econ 101 demand curve about how many people want a product. For Becker, the demand curve is all about the benefit of education. You can think of it as showing the marginal rate of return, or the extra benefit you get from each additional year you spend studying. And as you can see, it always slopes downwards. The big question, of course, is why? Well, there are three main reasons, and you'll definitely want to jot these down for your exam. First, we have diminishing returns, right? The pay bump you get going from 10th grade to 12th is usually way bigger than the bump from getting a master's degree to a PhD. Second, there are foregone earnings. The longer you study, the more potential salary you're giving up by not working, and that lost salary gets bigger and bigger. And finally, higher degrees just cost more. So you put it all together, and the benefit of one more year of school starts to shrink. Okay, that's the benefit side. Now let's look at the other side of the equation, the cost. And for that, we have the supply curve. This curve is all about the cost of financing your education, where you get the money for fees, books, and just, living. And you'll notice it looks different. It's not a smooth curve. It actually goes up in steps. Let me show you what I mean. I want you to picture a money ladder. It makes this super easy to understand. You always start on the lowest, cheapest rung. That's your step one, money from your family, maybe a grant or a scholarship. That's basically free money or close to it. Once that's all used up, you have to climb to the next rung. Step two, maybe you get a government subsidized loan with a nice low interest rate. And only when that option is exhausted do you climb to the very top, most expensive rung, a loan from a commercial bank. See how each step makes your money more expensive? That's why the supply curve steps upwards. Perfect. Now that we have our building blocks, our demand and supply curves, we can finally put together Becker's first model. He calls it the elite approach. And it basically asks, is your success in education purely a matter of raw, natural talent? Now, this next part is absolutely crucial. You have to understand the core assumption of this model. The elite model says, let's imagine a world where money is not an issue. Everybody has access to the same funds at the same cost. In this world, the only thing that makes people different is their natural ability. So when Becker uses the word elite, he's not talking about being rich. He's talking about an elite level of talent or ability. So how does this actually play out? Well, let's take an example. Imagine two students dreaming of clearing the UPSC exam to become an IAS officer. One student is a naturally quick learner, really sharp. The other has to work a bit harder. The model says that the more able student expects a higher chance of success,
which means a bigger future payoff from all that coaching and studying. Because they expect a higher return, their demand for that educational investment is higher. Simple, right? Higher ability means you're willing to invest more. And here it is, the money shot for your exam diagram. In the elite model, because everything is driven by ability and the expected benefits, it is the demand curve that moves. For a person with higher ability, their demand curve shifts up and to the right. And what does that mean? It means they will choose to invest more in their education than someone with less ability. And because we all love a good exam tip, here's a super simple way to lock this in your memory. Just remember the letters ETA. ETA. Elite is for the talented and able. Easy, right? This will instantly remind you that the elite model is all about ability, and ability affects the demand curve. Okay, so that was one way of looking at the world. Now, let's completely flip the script and look at Becker's second model, the egalitarian approach. This one asks a totally different question. What if we're all pretty similar in talent, and what really makes the difference is just money? So the main idea here is the exact opposite of what we just discussed. In this model, we assume that everyone's got roughly the same amount of talent. The real reason we see such huge differences in education levels, this model argues, comes down to the different opportunities people have to finance it. It's not about how smart you are, it's about your access to resources. So what creates these different opportunities? Well, it could be a whole bunch of things. Maybe you were lucky enough to be born into a wealthy family. Or maybe you worked hard and got a fantastic scholarship. It could even be things like having good social connections that help you secure a cheap loan. All of these things give some people a huge advantage by giving them access to cheaper money. And this brings us to the key difference when you're drawing your diagrams. In the egalitarian model, since it's all about financial opportunity and the cost of funds, it's the supply curve that moves. For a person who has better opportunities, cheaper money, their supply curve shifts down and to the right. This means even with the same ability as someone else, they can simply afford to invest more in their education. And of course you knew it was coming. We have a handy mnemonic for this one too. For this model, just remember the word ego. E-G-O. Egalitarian gives opportunity. This little trick links the egalitarian model straight to financial opportunity, which, as we now know, shifts the supply curve. Okay, time for the showdown. We've looked at both models on their own. Now let's put them side by side. Comparing and contrasting these two is a very common exam question, so this next part is basically a ready-made answer for you. Let's just walk through this nice and clear. In the elite model, what matters most? Ability. In the egalitarian model, opportunity. Who invests more in the elite model? The high-ability folks, because they expect higher returns. In the egalitarian model, the people with access to cheaper funds, because they can afford more. But honestly, the most important row on this whole table, the one you absolutely cannot forget, is the last one. In the elite model, it's the demand curve that shifts. In the egalitarian model, it's the supply curve. If you get that, you've nailed the biggest difference between the two. So, we have covered a lot of ground. So before we wrap up, let's pull everything together onto one final slide. Think of this as your ultimate cheat sheet, perfect for that last-minute revision before you walk into the exam hall. All right, let's lock this in with a rapid-fire recap. 1. Education is a human capital investment, a cost-benefit decision. 2. The demand curve is about benefits and represents ability. 3. The supply curve is about costs and represents opportunity. 4. The elite model, remember ETA, says high ability shifts the demand curve up. And 5, the egalitarian model, remember EGO, says better opportunity shifts the supply curve down into the right. That is the entire theory in a nutshell. And I want to leave you with one final thought to chew on. Look at India today. On one hand, we have these hyper-competitive exams like NEET and JEE, which seem to be all about rewarding pure ability. But on the other hand, we have a massive growing market for education loans, scholarships, and financial aid, which highlights the huge role of opportunity. So, which of Becker's models do you think does a better job of explaining the reality for students in India right now? It's a great question to think about. All the very best for your exams.